Hello everyone, welcome to Barca Talk. I'm your host Gabriel here in the Spanish capital. Want to do a quick preview of tomorrow's Champions League match against the mighty Bayern Munich. And I have two great guests on the podcast today. First, Kevin Williams helped to walk me off the ledge a little bit about tomorrow night's match. And then I spoke with Craig McGeough to get his emotional reaction to Bayern and why they don't get the respect here in Europe and why they aren't talked about more. But first, I just kind of want to give my three things for tomorrow night's game. The first thing, this team is rolling. Bayern and FC Barcelona, we know, is in flux right now, especially with Griezmann leaving and especially with not playing over the weekend with the Sevilla match being postponed. So we're kind of in limbo here because we don't know what's going to be the starting 11, especially with the news coming out today that Sergiño Dest did not practice. So does that mean Sergio Roberto becomes right back? Now, that's going to be a problem because, as we saw in the 8-2 match, Alphonso Davies is quite rapido, so he's quite fast. So he could have a long day there, Sergio Roberto, trying to defend, and it all depends on what Koeman does. Kevin alluded to this a little bit, that maybe Koeman might go to a three-back system to try to get more possession in the midfield. I'm not so sure. We'll see, obviously. I'm hoping that Koeman does something to be a little bit more pragmatic just to get some points because, as we know, Bayern are just lighting it up in the Bundesliga. You know, we have Lewandoski as probably the best number 9 right now if you want to compare him with Lukaku right now, but I would still probably take Lewandoski just a little bit. But let's kind of break down the match quickly tomorrow and just the things that I'm looking at. So first of all, Bayern, they play in a 4-2-3-1. That's what they majority play 65% of the time, and they also can play in a 4-3-3. But mainly it's a 4-2-3-1. Now, obviously, I put a Twitter poll yesterday. Lewandowski, Kimmich or Goretzka, the flank play, what is your biggest concern? And Lewandowski was number 2, so obviously Lewandowski is a stud. You know, so far this season, he's averaging 1.37 goals a game, 0.5 assists with an XG of 1.14. And so far, his total this season is 11 goals and 4 assists, which is remarkable already. He's already out in front. Obviously, as I talked about this with Craig, Bayern is the top dog in Bundesliga, so they just eat these teams up for lunch, where Robert Lewandoski is able to get these goals. But again, he's going to create havoc for our back. Again, who does Koeman start in the back? Who does he start? Because obviously we want to see Piqué, but he's just coming off injury. Araujo, I would probably say, is the best partner for him against Lewandowski, just a little bit more physical, faster. But you never know. You never know if Koeman's going to go with Longley. We'll see. And we know in that 8-2 defeat, Longley was no match for Lewandowski. Lewandowski pushed him around, bullied him around, and inevitably left all the space behind where Bayern were able to expose that. So again, Lewandowski is definitely going to be dangerous. He's against Barcelona in 3 career matches. He's had 2 goals, but it just seems more. When I was looking up at the stat, I was like, I thought he was against Barcelona more often. He hasn't, but still, he's a dangerous number 9, one of the best in the world. He's on form, and Bayern have been explosive with him. My next concern is the midfield possession. Now, as we saw in the Getafe game, we had problems with the possession. And, this is going to be a problem because if we resort to long balls or just trying to relieve pressure, this does not play well for our style. Now, Memphis is going to have limited opportunities, and it's going to be interesting to see how he converts, right? Because he may only get 1 or 2 opportunities, and he has to make the best of them. Usually, he's going to have 4 or 5, so he's going to have a chance to miss here and there. So we'll see what happens with that. But with this possession, Bayern has averaged close to 60%. FCB's had problems in these first 3 matches having a consistency with possession. And for me, this pairing of Kimmich and Goretzka is just, wow, it's just something. I was doing the research last night over them, watching some video, just seeing their heat maps, just seeing everything. And I can't remember the last time I've been so impressed with a pairing like this in a long time. Maybe, with Xavi and Iniesta, I would probably say. But this pairing is something special. They're young. They run for miles. They're going to give Busquets quite a showing tomorrow night because Busquets is going to have to play one of the best games he's played. And this 2 pairing of Kimmich and Goretzka is just something else. Now, they complement each other very well. Goretzka is more the defensive physical, whereas Kimmich is more the opportunistic passing assister. But man, they just complement each other very well. Now, Goretzka, again, like I said, he's more defensive. He's the stronger tackler of the two. But again, just the way they complement each other, I think is going to give our midfield fits, especially if Bayern has more possession. Now, Kevin alluded to this. He didn't think that the possession game was going to be so one-sided for Bayern. I'm a little bit disagreeing with that. I think that Bayern is going to be able to run the midfield. I just think they're just more talented right now on paper, and I just think they're playing at a level that we can't compete right now in this moment, especially not playing against Sevilla over this weekend. I think that really caused a wrench in our plans, because if we would have played over the weekend, we could see how Barcelona was going to be going forward with this. Now, again, we'll see what happens with the midfield. My last concern is the flank play. Now, I just highlighted that maybe Sergio Roberto may start. That's going to be a big problem because, as we remember in the 8-2 Alphonso Davies, I think that was probably his breakout game where everyone kind of knew about him. Just the physicality, the speed he has, the way he was able to cut in was incredible in that match. And he has just rose in stock, right? So in this past season, he's played more minutes. He's more of a starter than he was before. And again, playing really well for the Canadian national team and just being an up-and-coming player for Bayern. And again, that's going to be a lot of problems because, as I talked to with Craig, the crossing of Bayern is so, and I hate to just say this word because it's so just stereotypical, but efficient. The way they're able to cross and just find Lewandowski, find holes, and you always know pesky Thomas Mueller is always around the goal, ready to scrap something up, and that's going to cause havoc for Barcelona. Now, obviously, Barcelona have a chance. They're going to be at the Camp Nou. This is the first time they're going to be playing with the crowd like this for a Champions Night, so it's good. There's a lot of things happening, but unfortunately, I think it's going to be not enough. And yes, this is just where we're at right now. We're just in a state of transition with FC Barcelona, and you just kind of have to tip your hat right now to the way Bayern is coming into this season, coming into this match. They're firing on all cylinders, and so we'll see. Now, after the break, you're going to hear my conversation with Kevin Williams and Craig McGeough. We're going to talk a little bit about the match even more, get their opinions. But first, some quick Barca Talk announcements. We have a newsletter that comes out every Wednesday. If you're looking for an aggregate to put all the articles and videos once a week, I do that for you. Sign up. It's free. You can do it on Twitter. You can do it on our website as well. And the last thing, our Patreon community is, I'm loving it so much. Our WhatsApp group is fans from all over the world, and I just love that we just have some great banter. And over the weekend we were talking about the Manchester United game, obviously talking crap about Ronaldo and so forth, so that was a lot of fun. But also just getting everyone's opinions about this match, especially the Bayern match, is very interesting, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're looking for another way to interact with other Kool-Aids, other FC Barcelona fans, consider joining our Patreon group. It's only $5 a month. And on top of that, you get our weekly extra podcast on Friday, which is the Barca Talk Cafe, where I record with Mariana Guzman, who's in Barcelona. And she will actually be at the match tomorrow and sending pictures to our WhatsApp group. So that's a lot of fun that we like to partake in. So, so if you want to get some more Barca content from Spain, consider joining our Patreon group. After the break, I talked to Kevin Williams to get his temperature on how we should be feeling before this huge Bayern Munich match. So you're headed to tomorrow's match, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was super easy. They had it's sort of a letdown that only 31,000 season ticket holders wanted to come, but on the upside, that meant that freed up 8,000 seats that we could buy, and so I snagged one right away.
Yeah,
and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's been a long time for me. I'm going in October, so against Valencia, so I'm looking forward to that match. So tell me, how are you feeling prior to tomorrow's match? Because I can tell you honestly, I'm a bit nervous, scared. I know this is kind of the feeling that most Kool-Aids have, but I was kind of looking up on Bayern's midfield, their statistics so far, and I'm really worried about tomorrow's match.
See, I am super excited. We've never seen Barcelona without Messi even as an option. right? And the team is playing more as a team. The ball is moving better, play is flowing better. Memphis has seized the reins. And he is a very creative, very dynamic player who changes the way Barcelona gets at an opponent, right? I mean, previously Barcelona, what's the word? They've been slow, right? The ball oozes out of the back.
Sure.
And then it goes to Busquets, and he oozes around, and then it goes to Messi, and he stands there and either tries a run or makes a pass. And what's happening now is that the ball is popping around to Pedri, or De Jong is making a run, or Busquets is sliding it forward. Memphis is diving in from a wing. I mean, it's a very different approach to things now, and one that I don't believe Bayern, who is also not what they were 2 years ago, will be as prepared for. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to a match that will be more interesting and more fun than many think. I mean, I think the Braithwaite news, many are saying, oh, no, I'm like, it doesn't bother me. He wasn't up to standard anyway. So the question will be, what does Cayman do now, right? I mean, there's much talk about the Coutinho starting. No match legs, no match fitness. That would be a big ask. Then again, who have you got, right? I mean, you've got De Jong, you've got Demir, and you want your front line against Bayern to be Demir, De Jong, and Depay. While you love the alliteration, I don't know if a 18-year-old kid is quite ready for that. I mean, then again, toss him in there and let's see. The thing that worries me the most, and frankly, what always worries me, is how slow the Barcelona midfield is.
Yeah.
Busquets can't move. De Jong isn't that fast. Pedri is active, but he's not that fast. So, I mean, does Cayman go with a 4 or even 5-man midfield, like a 3-5-2? I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because you bring it right into what I was going to talk to you next about Bayern's midfield of Kimmich and Goretzka and against the midfield of Barca. And just reading the stats that I've been looking at for them, this pairing of the season, I'm just in awe. This is a pairing. They're two 26-year-old midfielders that run all over. You have to see the heat map. It is so impressive. They perfectly are disciplined for left and right side. The amount of kilometers they cover, the amount of opportunities. And I know Bayern is the leg up in the Bundesliga, but still, to be able to put this output, that to me right now is one of the things that really concerns me, because watching the previous games with Barcelona, just seeing the lack of possession that they had, this is going to be one of those games where I think Bayern has maybe 55, 60%, and how Barcelona reacts to their limited opportunities is what's going to really tell for me the match for tomorrow night. What do you think?
So I think that the possession will be nearer to 50-50, and neutralizing that midfield with possession will be one fascinating thing. The other fascinating thing, we keep in mind that it's been a very long time, probably since the days of Thierry Henry and Samuel Eto'o, that Barcelona has had forwards that can press.
Sure.
Right. And I mean, what usually happens against Bayern is they're allowed to play the ball out of the back nice and easy, because Messi's standing there, Suarez is standing there. We never saw him against Bayern, but this time potentially they will have 2 or 3 forwards pressing hard. Pedri presses. My guess is Cayman will run out Sergio Roberto. He presses. Coutinho presses. Demir presses. De Jong presses. So don't count out this Barcelona side. I mean, they're not the strongest team right now, and certainly in November when Dembele and Fati come back,
Mm-hmm.
that front line will look very different
For sure.
and a lot more dangerous. But I mean, you might find that the 3Ds, should Cayman go that route, will be pretty effective in unsettling that midfield. My guess, though, is that Cayman will load up the midfield. I mean, I would be shocked if Sergio Roberto did not start in some role.
Well, that leads to me the next thing, because I think he will start, because the news just appeared right now that Sergio Dest did not practice today. So that means that there's going to be an opportunity, for Sergio Roberto. So going back to this, I think you see him at right back, or, do you see McGeough? I don't think so. I think Sergio Roberto is a little bit healthier for that opportunity. So this goes to my next question. I put a Twitter poll out here. What was the main concerns? And the number one reason, obviously Lewandowski was up high, but the flank play of Bayern, because as we remember in the A2, how Alphonso Davies especially, but also on the other side, on the right side, how they just abused Barcelona with the speed and the dynamism that they had. Now if Sergio Roberto plays, we lose a little bit of that speed that we had with Dest. The flank play, I mean, that's also really concerning, because now obviously Bayern have different ways of attacking, not through the middle, but also through the sides as well. And then obviously having Lewandowski as the point man, who's probably the best number 9 right now in the world.
So my views on Dest and Alba are that they're not up to standard anyway. So if anything happens where they can't play, I'm not that stressed about it.
Okay.
I think that if Cayman wants to go more defensive, you may well see McGeough.
Mm-hmm.
He is a stopper. He's physical. He's big. He's pacey enough.
Yeah.
I think that, frankly, Dest would have been a disaster against
Bayern. Yeah.
People talked about making jokes out of Semedo. Dest would have been just as bad, if not worse, because, I mean, it's just so fullbacks are going to be a problem for Barcelona all season.
Yeah.
And I was at the B match yesterday and I got to watch a lot of Alejandro Balde, and he's not ready yet either. So I mean, he's right now where he belongs, and so Alba is it. And I think that defensively and offensively, he's just not up to it. So I mean, people made a lot about Semedo in the 8-2, but I mean, for me, both lengths were a disaster. So I mean, I think that what Gabriel's going to have to do is try to hold possession.
Yeah.
And make Alba stay back, right? I mean, the problems always begin when Alba moves up. You can't have both fullbacks pressed up. And I don't know why Kool-Aid don't realize that when you have Dest and Alba both are charging forward, and you got Busquets and acres of space trying to cover things, you can't do it.
Yeah. You can't. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that we might see McGeough, and if we do, I'll be a lot more optimistic about a result than if we see Sergio Roberto at fullback.
Yeah, and that goes to the thing, right? Because if Koeman changes the formation, let's say just to a 3-back system, let's say to influx the midfield, then I think you see Sergio Roberto going to the midfield, maybe using McGeough on the right.
Right.
But again, but the thing is, I just don't know if Koeman does it, because I think he wants to be more steady with 4 in the back and having Alba on the left. Again, it's just kind of one of those things. He's the security blanket for Koeman on the left there. So it's quite interesting. I know you're shaking your head.
It makes me so that the idea of Jordi Alba as anybody's security,
I know,
is just horrifying. I mean, the big thing, the other thing will be who he plays at center back.
Sure.
So we know that PK is one, and who's the other one, right? My choice. It's gotta be Araujo, but I mean, he's also fond of Longley, who I think is a disaster waiting to happen, especially against Bayern, who frankly traumatized him last time. So I mean, it seems to me you got somebody who's young with more pace, more physical ability, more aerial skill. Start him next and tell Alba to defend for a change. Try defending and see how that goes, rather than running forward and throwing in that same blind cross to where Messi used to be time after time. I mean, if Barcelona scores early, they will have a shot at getting a win. I think if Bayern scores first and Barcelona need to chase the match, that could lead to a long evening.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think that Memphis will be on his game. I think that if Koeman does start Coutinho, I think that will be another factor that Bayern won't be prepared for. I think that if he gets really bold and gives the kid a run out, that too is something. I mean, Bayern likes to know what they're going to do.
Sure.
And they have these, I mean, they're structured, they're dangerous, they're deep. They're all those things that Barcelona is not. But I think that the Culés tend to sell their team short. Barcelona is a very talented team. It's not as deep as I would like because of all the injuries, but their starting 11 could go up against any team in football and be okay. And I think that Bayern is not the juggernaut they once were 2 years ago. I mean, certainly they're a diminished team from the 8-2. And I think that Barcelona is, strangely enough, which, I mean, it sounds weird, right? Because, I mean, with Messi being gone, to say they're a better team, even though they might not be as dangerous a team, right? They're a better team with Messi gone. That means that they have the opportunity to function as this unit once again, rather than rolling up and dumping the ball to the center point, Messi, and then seeing what happens. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a fun match. I mean, and I mean, people are wondering about the score. Whew, who knows, right? I mean, it could be 0-0, could be 1-1, could be another 8-2. I mean, this team is all over the place, and I think that Bayern is more vulnerable than people think. I mean, Barcelona will have to play at least an 8 out of 10 match to get a result.
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up some really good points. And see, this is why I wanted to talk to you, because you calmed me down. Yeah, because I was already thinking another 6-2, 8-2 in my head, especially just doing the research on Bayern yesterday and just obviously, just seeing what the firepower they've been bringing. So, thanks for calming me down. Where can our listeners follow your blog, your excellent blog? I mean, I always read it all the time. I love your point of view every time. What is the website of your blog again?
So we are at www.barcelonafootballblog.com, and it is run by myself and another crazy Culé named Isaiah Cambron. And yeah, we don't write as often as we'd like because real life gets in the way when we have things to say. And I mean, my hope is to be able to post a view from the stands shortly after the match. I'll be writing it while I'm there.
Perfect.
And yeah, it will be fun.
You're one of my favorite FC Barcelona Twitter follows as well. You always talk me down from the fence a lot of times, so I appreciate that. Have a great rest of the time in Barcelona, and we will speak soon, Kevin.
Very good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So Craig McGeough joins me. We're going to talk a little Bayern here and kind of the lack of respect they get here in Europe. We were just kind of briefly talking about this, but this is one of the things when I was looking at the research of the players on Y-Scout and so forth is, they've had an incredible run in the last 10 years. And I just don't understand why they don't get talked enough. Craig, do you think it's just because they're in the Bundesliga, they're the top dog and that's it? Because I don't know how it is in the UK, but in Spain, they rarely get the recognition they should, especially being as elite of a club as they are.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one to fathom because they're brilliant from top to bottom, minus the little personnel scandal they had a few years ago.
Sure.
But as a club, organizationally, institutionally, in terms of their personnel recruitment, their style of play, they're so hard to find fault with. I think some of it's been in the Bundesliga, which it's not a league I can really get into. I tried watching it when football came back after the first kind of major lockdown here in the UK. That was the first league that came back, and I tried to get into it, and I just couldn't. So I don't think that helps. The other thing for me, it's kind of, do you know how you get those low-key millionaires who they don't run big businesses and you don't really know what they do, but they drive around in a Ferrari? They're kind of like that, and they go under the radar. So I think to me that there should be an aspirational club that everyone looks up to, but it's a really difficult one to understand why they're not held in more regard than they are. I know it doesn't answer your question, by the way, but I'm just baffled by it. It's something I had a conversation with last week with someone who follows an English club, and it wasn't until I started saying I was worried about the game, and he said why. I told him about their personnel, how they get on. He was like, actually, yeah, I get that. It's strange, isn't it?
It is strange because, they're kind of what we've been kind of looking for in the way they've recruited players. They've gone through coaches. They don't seem to be financially strapped. The players they go after are really, younger. They don't throw so much money after them. I know they pick and prod off the Bundesliga team. So unfortunately, that is why they're always the top dog. And I wish there was a little bit more parity into that. But for example, like when you look at the last players that they were able to get at cost, essentially, you never hear Bayern really overly expending themselves, and they do such a great job of getting these players. And, talking about the game, the two midfielders of Kimmich and Goretzka, I mean, yikes. I just talked to Kevin Williams before you, and he was talking me down a little bit about how the midfield could be neutralized. But man, I think for me, that's one of the biggest concerns, because these kids, they're 26 years old. They have so much experience. They're a partnership already. They complement each other so well. On our beautiful Y Scout, I was watching the reports and stuff, and Craig, I'm very nervous about this. This is
arguably the greatest example you could have picked, right? Because if we were to just Johnny on the spot say, give me the top 3 centre midfielder pairings in Europe, you wouldn't get to them. I'm fairly convinced. Yeah. If you said, right, okay, give me your top 5 centre midfielders just in isolation, you probably wouldn't get to them. But they're brilliant. And you have that throughout their squad. And the thing that I admire the most is really boring. You could say it's really football nerdy, but you mentioned about going through coaches and going through players. When was the last time you read a story? Granted, you probably don't read much of, Der Spiegel or whatever the German papers are. But when was the last time you read a story of Bayern ever rushing anything?
Yeah.
Ever. Everything is planned. Everything is thought out. They've got an identity and they stick to it. And this is where I think from a Barcelona perspective, we should be able to fall squarely into that bracket, because we, in theory, and I'm using that word in theory very, very, very literally, because in reality, probably a different story, but we, in theory, have an identity. So yes, we discovered Pedri, who fits perfectly into our midfield. I think a little bit of that was calculated risk, which is fine. But we should be able to look at players and say, 3 years down the line, we need that player. What do we have in La Masia? If we don't have it in La Masia, we don't think we need to go and start recruiting now, because we know what's coming. We should know what type of coach we want. We should know what type of fullback we want. And we don't do it. We're very rushed. We're very last minute. It's kind of crisis leads to crisis leads to crisis a lot of the time, which, I don't want that to be kind of typical Barca hyperbole, but, we very rarely make well thought out decisions. Setien was a knee-jerk reaction. Koeman was a knee-jerk reaction. Valverde had a little bit more thought, but went totally against the identity. Although he did all right. And I think this is what we should learn from Bayern, is that, we don't need to go and make superstar signings. We need to make signings that fit into our system. And again, just to pick up a point, I'm sorry I'm going on a bit, but you mentioned, you wish there was a little bit more parity in the Bundesliga. I don't really buy that so much, because ultimately, if Bayern stopped buying German players, then the other clubs that compete regularly in the Europa League and whatnot would find themselves in a worse position, right? So it's almost trickle-down economics in a way, but one that actually works, unlike the real world. Whereas, why aren't we doing this? I know we've had this chat in our WhatsApp group before for our patrons, which is, why aren't we going out and looking at the best Spanish talent instead of constantly looking at glamour leagues, quote unquote, and picking up these players who knows whether they'll fit in. Depay is doing well, but he was a gamble. Why didn't we look at the top scorers in Spain? So I think we genuinely need to take a good hard look at how Bayern are doing and look at it, because everything they do is calculated and it works, and it doesn't put them into debt and it doesn't put them into risk.
So this is going to lead perfectly, because You're a Packers fan, and the Packers of the NFL.
Do we have to?
I'm not going to talk about the game. I'm going to talk about their structure. That they're the only team in the NFL that doesn't have an owner. So do you think there's something to that? Because obviously Bayern has an owner, the trickle down of responsibility. There's been a little bit more stability of that, whereas we've had an influx with presidents, scandal, and so forth. Every 3 years essentially. Do you think there's any credence to that? Where obviously we love the idea of the voting and having the power, especially if you're associate and so forth. But at the same time, it's very political, and there's just less stability because there isn't an owner figurehead trickling down that responsibility. Do you think there's something to that with Bayern's success?
Yeah, I think so. I think they definitely feel. I think Germany views football in a way that I think a lot of particularly British people aspire to, that doesn't exist. The kind of the classic working class game that communities rally around. I think Bayern and also German football in general, minus the Red Bull situation.
Sure.
They view it that way. So I think at Bayern there's a responsibility to something that's slightly bigger than trophies. And I've alluded to this on previous podcasts where I said being a Barca fan should be about more than just winning, because if it was just about winning, you'd follow Madrid, right? And I'm unashamed about that. I don't mind if people think that that's me being anti-Barcelonismo in any way. It's just factual. The stats tell us that story. So I think one, you have to be about something bigger than that. I think I would dispute the Packers argument slightly, because I think the Packers system works because we've had 25 years of immense quarterback play, but we won't delve too deep into that. If we could find an O-line and a D-line, that would help, but we won't go to an NFL podcast. But no, I think you're right. I think if you have an identity that's bigger than a person or bigger than a business, I think it has to help. And again, that's where we should be. And I think but the fans have to buy into that, which means that if Bayern go through a quote unquote fallow period, you don't see riots at the training ground.
For sure.
If we don't win a trophy this year, which is completely feasible, although I think we'll do okay eventually. Can you imagine the scenes that will be greeted? It'll be a case of revisionism on the Messi scenario.
Yeah.
Laporta will be the worst president since the last one. The signings will be horrendous. And I think as well as the commercial identity, the fans buy into it and they say, we're all in. And that if we win, that's great. If we don't, we move on. We don't buckle. We don't do knee jerk. Not many clubs have either the commercial setup or the fan base that can allow them to do that. San Pauli, another great example from Germany, but from a completely different perspective. They're all in on the identity from top to bottom, and I think that's what you need rather than just the lack of a chairman or owner.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I remember in last season in our WhatsApp group, we were talking about the coach now of Bayern, Julian Nagelsmann, about when he was in Leipzig and kind of up and coming. I've laid out a couple of things that I'm really concerned about. The flank play, obviously Lewandowski, the pairing of Kimmich and Goretzka. But I also think it comes down to the tactical formation that he has Munich playing. And also, Nagelsmann doesn't have major trophies, but I just feel that he's going to have Bayern more locked in than Koeman with Barcelona, just because of the history. I'm just looking at the history. Maybe Koeman changes it up. As Kevin said previously, he would hope for a 3-back system to try to kind of counter, the midfield of Bayern. But if we're just looking at the coaching matchup, do you think Bayern has a advantage here?
100%. 100%. I respect Kevin a lot. I follow him on Twitter. I've never spoken to him, but I respect him a lot based on his Twitter output. I don't like how fit he seems to be. That makes me feel bad about myself. But we'll move on from that very quickly. But I think this goes back to one of my previous points, which is with Nagelsmann, they chose very sensibly a coach that knows the league that they play in primarily, had European experience, has a style, has a system, etc. Now, you don't want to be dogmatic about that, but you need to have something. I've got no idea what Koeman's going to do tomorrow, and not in a good way. Not in a Guardiola kind of this could be really intelligent until he overthinks. Where I genuinely don't know. I don't think Koeman knows the best Barcelona side. I don't think he knows how to play against better teams. I don't think he knows how necessarily to play against worse teams. So yeah, I think Bayern have an advantage on literally every area of the pitch, other than on an individual player level. But then they don't work as well as a unit.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is why we play sports, because anything can happen. But if we're looking on paper, there's Bayern does have advantages up and down. Now I'll leave you with the last thing. What is your biggest concern for tomorrow night? Just one concern that the highest of priority. Let's say if you were coaching, what would you try to stop Bayern at their first thing and then just kind of hope for the best from there?
I don't see how we don't get overrun defensively and revert to long balls, which just ultimately it feels like it relieves the pressure, but in reality, it just keeps you pegged back in. So Ange Postecoglou, who is a new Celtic manager, who is effectively the second coming of Christ after Messi, I think. Sorry to anyone that's religious out there, that's tongue in cheek. But he had a great. He was asked about this when Celtic played their qualifier to get into the group stage, and said, do you see it being a bit of a long ball game, changing your style? And he said no, because the easiest way to relieve pressure on a defense is to keep the ball. Yeah, and I think that's what we need to do tomorrow. But my worry is that Koeman will try and be overly pragmatic. We'll get overrun defensively, and he'll kick the ball long. And if that happens, it could be a long, long, long night, I think.
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm obviously optimistic. I'm always going to think and watch the match with open eyes like that. But at the same time, I'm just looking at this data, the statistics, the way they play, and I think what also hurts is that we weren't able to play this weekend. I think that's a big thing to come from international break, and then also in the first game being Bayern. Even though it is at home, I think that's going to help quite a bit to have the crowd finally there for a Champions League match on a weekday night. But man, I mean, just to have the game against Sevilla would have been a really nice kind of warm up, just to kind of let us know a little bit more of who he's going to start. Because could you see Luc de Jong starting? You know what I'm saying? To counteract their defensive backs.
I think so, but I think it plays into my worry, which is that I think he'll say, well, we'll have De Jong up there to relieve the pressure, and he can hold the ball up and stuff like that. So I think so. And to me, this isn't about being necessarily negative or pessimistic. It's realistic about where we are. And I think you can be optimistic, and I applaud that. But I think a sense of realism says, realistically, it's kind of like you take if we take a hiding, we take a hiding. Let's move on. It's a new team. We're rebuilding. No matter how people want, Laporta might say no rebuilds at this club. Well, I'm sorry, mate, but that's exactly what we're having to do now, and that, but that's fine. And taking this full circle back to my original point about Bayern, that's fine. That's what clubs need to do. The only way that you're not in a perpetual state of rebuild is if you're getting pumped with cash, and that will eventually crumble beneath you. So every now and then you have to rebuild. It's been worse than this. It's been much worse than this.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we'll see where we are tomorrow after the game. Sorry to interrupt there. We'll see where we are tomorrow after the game. But to me, I'm pessimistic about it. I think we might take a hiding, but Bayern Munich, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're going to be the rave childs after this, I believe. We'll see. They'll be the talk of Europe for one night, I think, and then after that, they're going to be not talked again. Because again, here in Spain, the whole weekend was Ronaldo's return with his 2-goal amazing attack, because he's the best player ever.
Don't get me started.
And then obviously last night with Vinicius, the second coming of Christ now, so we'll see.
See that one I get. That one I get. But on the Newcastle thing, so sorry, tangent, but obviously our WhatsApp group, we're talking about it. So I live the other side of the river to Newcastle. So Newcastle is in quote unquote my local team. They're awful. Like, we think we've got it bad. Their fans are following. So I'm trying to work out what the equivalent would be in Spain. So what's below Segunda B? What would that be? Is that you start getting into kind of the autonomous territory leagues and stuff like that, don't you? So the Newcastle fans that I know, a lot of them have started following what we would call non-league football. So where you pay like £3 to get in, and you can drink beer at the sideline still, because Newcastle is that bad. So the Ronaldo return, a 2-yard tap in, goals are goals, and the way they're going on, Newcastle fans are like, you can have it if you want. We're awful. So Vinicius, I get. The Ronaldo hype is terrible. Terrible.
The only way that I'm looking forward to the match, because I love when Champions comes back. But again, like you said, it's okay to be realistic. And Bayern are just like, what I always think of Bayern is like an efficient footballing machine. Just as that's what they are.
Without being massively sweeping statement stereotypical, they're so typically German, aren't they?
Correct.
They're faultlessly efficient.
Correct.
They're just brilliant. And
just watch their crosses. That to me is always like, their crossing is so effective, especially with Lewandowski at the top. But I know you have to go. I have to go. But thank you for giving me a little bit of balance here with this match tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. We'll talk soon.
Take care.